we also had a group of individuals who were totally not in any form of transportation industry. We had a couple of bankers that actually came into us.
Yeah.
And I looked at their salary on their resume and I said, you know that what I'm offering is not
high,
this.
but not that high.
It's less one number, the first number.
One digit.
And I said, so what are you looking for? I can't match your salary. And he said,
you probably heard about the recent stock market decline, and it proved again how important it is to diversify your sources of income. So here is where we want to introduce you to our sponsor, the Octa Trading App. If you've been listening to us for a while, and you should be, you know this is not the first time we are recommending it. But we're talking about the Octa Trading App again because trading is a long journey that can turn out to be great for you, but only if you take it seriously. That's where Octa can help. They are a pretty reliable partner and their trading app provides a comprehensive approach for their clients. It's simple to use and allows you to trade on 300 plus instruments including stocks, currencies and even precious metals with zero commissions. And if you do make some money, it's always going to be credited to your account fast. You can withdraw your money and potential earnings pretty fast too, within 1 hour whenever you like. They were even awarded as the broker with the fastest withdrawals in Singapore for 2023. So they've got all you need for you to potentially make some earnings at a schedule that works for you. And you can rest assured that Octa tries to make it as safe as possible. They're a globally regulated CFD broker that's been around for 12 years. But of course, trading will always come with risks and requires knowledge to work. Now, we're definitely not trading gurus by any means. We just want to let people know that this option exists. At the end of the day, please remember to trade only with what you can afford. With all that in mind, if you'd like to give it a try, download the Octa Trading app at the link in the description or scan this QR code. And use the promo code YALABUT08 to double your first deposit. And now, on to the podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Yala, your thrice weekly podcast where we talk about hottest news with a touch of what, Terrence?
Good old humor.
Good old humor, man.
Yeah.
So today, we have someone whose company has been in the news over the past year, a couple of times.
For doing quite radical things in the industry.
Radical things, man. In an industry that's been around for quite a while.
That you wouldn't think would be in the news for any reason, right?
Yeah, for disruption. The only time you hear disruption in the industry is when there are like delays. But this one is disruption of another kind.
Yeah.
And we have none other than the director of Westpoint Transit, Lionel Lee.
hello.
Welcome to Yalabat, man.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, guys.
Yeah, I mean, we were just quickly for the audience, right? We are saying that you were in the news recently. What was the big thing that the news coverage was about that you guys announced?
Yeah. I think the important thing or the main thing was that $5,000 salary, right? That made the headlines.
Yeah.
For bus captains.
Correct. And I think that raised quite a few eyebrows, turned a few heads outside of the industry, which was honestly quite a surprise for us as well. Us as in being in the company. Because we thought that when we launched the campaign, it would just at most infuriate our competitors for obvious reasons. But I think when it became part of the media's scope or got their attention, that's what caught us by surprise.
Also, so to clarify, it was a recruiting call for you're hiring new bus drivers and dangling a $5,000 starting salary for these new bus drivers, right?
Correct. So sorry to cut in. It was a $5,000 salary and a $10,000 joining bonus. So that same reaction was what we got from many of the people who read the news.
I see.
And there was an article that came out this past July, but also in February.
Yes.
And so when was the first time you launched the campaign? Last December, is it?
Yeah. So we launched in late December. We had planned it for about 10 months prior to that. Mainly because, like I was saying, we were trying to make sure we don't step on the toes of our competitors. So we wanted to word it correctly, make sure the policies and the response templates were ready. And we wanted to make clear that we were not out to poach drivers from within the industry. We wanted to see if we could find, candidates that were outside of the bus driving or bus transportation industry itself.
Because my question was going to be like, what do you mean not step on the toe? So that was your main concern, that you didn't want them to think that you are just spoiling market in terms.
Correct.
Oh.
Correct.
But
Because
isn't offering a higher salary for work that sometimes public perception of it is like it's very menial work and things like that. Wasn't that a very progressive and positive step for the whole industry? Like, well, why do you think that it would step on the toes of your competitors?
Well, I think sometimes the intent doesn't always translate in terms of how it's interpreted by people on the same side as you are, right? Like you rightly pointed out, members of the public, candidates, even the media, later on, they see this as a positive thing because you're trying to raise, resources made available for people who are looking to enter an industry that's seen as quite menial or quite physical and quite demanding, and often, I would say, not very well paid, right, if I were to put it bluntly. But if you are a competitor or a counterpart within the industry providing the exact same service, you are then compelled
to increase.
To either follow suit or to at least respond in a similar manner. So we can understand that, in at that time, if we had just launched it, how it would be interpreted by my counterparts. And I was very adamant with the team that I didn't want to offend the other operators because, number one, this is a very small industry. We're all very close-knitted. Number two, I don't have that intent of, taking someone else's drivers because at the end of the day, we're all trying to earn a day's living, right? And if I were to do that, one day someone else is going to do something similar to me, or it would not set the best example for future generations, of business leaders, and also for, my team as well. That was not the tone I wanted to set.
So how did you make that difference? What was the nuance that you focused on to not have that happen?
Okay, so firstly, when we launched the hiring campaign, we wanted to make sure that any existing driver, bus driver, that applied for the job, they would be vetted firstly based on their existing occupation. So where exactly are you driving at now? If it is a direct competitor, we would have told them that, okay, we understand you're driving for, so-and-so company. We'll get back to you. But we also informed them that we are currently not looking for existing bus drivers.
Okay.
I see,
you won't poach, right? Basically.
Yes, correct.
I see.
Yeah, so that was the first thing. Secondly, as well, whenever we actually had candidates that come in, we would actually look through their experiences. So it's not just your current employment, but how far back in time were you a bus driver, if it existed on your timeline as well.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
The main aim was to see if we could provide employment of a higher financial nature to people who had the passion for driving, hopefully outside of the industry, or had exited the industry for perhaps financial reason and wished to come back.
Okay.
I see. So you're growing the pool rather than taking from your competitors and all that.
That was the primary aim.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
So I mean, there are many ways that you can do a marketing campaign for hiring and all. But what made you and your team want to anchor it in increasing the basic salary?
I think because it's a very practical way of approaching it. It is one of the most well-known shortcoming of this position, meaning being a bus driver in Singapore within the private transport industry. So by that, I mean not including your public transport operators. I can't comment for them. But within our industry, the private transportation industry, to be a bus driver, it either requires you to work very long hours or do many trips to earn a certain amount of salary. And that usually requires a lot of physical, either concentration, endurance, because you're operating a very large vehicle. So the danger element is there. You have to sometimes deal with passengers who may be, for lack of a better word, a bit difficult. And also there is that dynamic nature of traffic, right? You have to constantly react to traffic conditions. So if you're young, it's doable. But as you start to get older, that's when the physical nature of the job starts becoming more demanding. And so for us, that was important to actually control as well.
I see.
Because the situation at that point in time was that our fleet of drivers or team of drivers within my company, they were getting very old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So some renewal in some sense of the pool of drivers we have in Singapore. That's part of the aim also. So, I mean, but just to dig in a little bit, like when you say that it's much more physical and everything, right? Because I don't have a Class 4 license and I don't understand like the how different driving a big a bus would be compared to even a van or some van I've driven, right? But bus, like what is physical about it that maybe that age would form a some kind of natural barrier to you doing it. What is it about it?
Yeah. Okay. So I think number one, my disclaimer is I don't have a Class 4 license myself.
Okay.
So I've never even driven a bus, a large bus, right? So my understanding would be what I would provide my response, right? So number one is because the larger the vehicle, the more blind spots there are.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So let's say, for example, when you're doing a turn, your turning radius is much larger.
Yeah.
Right. So when you execute that turn, you need to make sure that you leave enough space not to hit the curb, people standing on the sidewalk, or even any walls that may be nearby if you're parking. And then if you add speed into that, especially if you're on the open road and you need to change lanes or avoid a slow-moving vehicle, for example, then you need to make sure that you have enough distance and accurate judgment to do that, right? And then lastly, because we are in the line of basically transporting people to and from certain places, you have to also accommodate for the fact that you are constantly stopping and starting, checking on your passengers, sitting down, making sure everyone's seated properly. So there's a lot of multitasking that's being done within a short journey, and you have to make sure that everything is ticked. You can't overlook one thing.
I see.
Because all it takes is for you to move off before one passenger sits down. Yeah. And then you have someone tumbling over the floor, etc.
So it's almost like you are like having to pilot a plane like that, where it's a very big vehicle and there's a lot of moving parts and passengers and a lot of people, and people don't follow instructions to sit down when they need to. And that's where that liability and you need to always be attentive throughout the whole journey. That's where it's tiring, right?
Yes. Secondly, and I think this is maybe something that the drivers will relate to. So if you just imagine driving from the east to the west or north to south of Singapore, even though we're not big compared to, say, other countries, just a 40-minute commute on a private car alone, just imagine driving there and being stuck in morning traffic is already quite a bit of a pain to everybody, right? Imagine having to do that twice a day or 3 times a day during the peak hours throughout, each day, up to 6 days a week. It does add to that physical and mental toll as well.
And somehow it's not like compared to a plane, planes don't have like cyclists around and other angry drivers, horning them and stuff like that.
And then got stewardesses to help you settle things also. Bus don't have it, right?
So just to clarify, when you said public transit, right? Like for our listeners also, understanding the space that Westpoint Transit operates in, how would you describe that compared to like public transport? I mean, public transport, everyone knows, is the buses that anyone can take. But private transit, what's that?
Okay, so it's very straightforward, right? So private transportation is just like what the name entails. It's a private arrangement, usually commercial, between a company and ours. So for example, in our case, we primarily provide transportation for staff of certain companies in Singapore where the public transport network cannot reach. So your trains, buses, and to some extent, even your on-demand cars as well. When I say they cannot reach, it's not because they physically cannot get there, but because, for example, peak hour demand, the amount of, for example, Grab cars that are available on the island is just not enough to cater to all the staff requirements that need to go to Tuas South, for example, at 7 o'clock in the morning.
I see.
So this is where we, as in the private transport industry, comes in to fill in that gap. So that'll be one scenario. The other scenario is if you take the MRT lines, and you get to Tuas South. From there to walk to your, whether it's your factory, your office, your shipyard, it's going to be at least a 40-minute commute, right? Because the places that are operating there, they are not like HDB blocks where it's very close together and you have sheltered walkways. These ones you're talking about just open air walks, big roads with heavy traffic. So if it's a sunny day, it's okay to some extent. But if it's a rainy day or any other elements that are involved in causing you some sort of delay, getting involved in there, then that's when you face a lot of inconvenience getting to your workplace.
I see. But in a country like Singapore, where we're always building new roads, building new routes for buses, shuttle service, is the space you're operating in a shrinking space?
It depends on the time frame you're looking at. So if we're talking about, because I'm second generation business lead, right? When my parents started the company in the 80s, the short answer is yes. Back then, what we call door-to-door transportation was more popular. So the bus would literally drop each staff member at the doorstep.
It's like a school bus.
Yes, correct.
School bus
for work.
for work,
Yeah, correct. But then, of course, as the public transport network, especially the MRT lines, get more extensive, right? The trend has now moved towards companies engaging us to drop or pick up their staff members from the MRT stations themselves.
Okay.
So in a way, it has shrunk. But when you look at places like Jurong Island, for example, right, or like I mentioned, Tuas South, where the government now has the mega yard, shipyard set up, a lot of the supporting companies and industries have also shifted physically and geographically to be closer to the shipyard itself. The port itself. So therefore, the transport network in terms of public transportation isn't available at this moment. And that's where we have to come in.
I see. So you mentioned that it's a second generation business, right?
Yes.
So for you, did you always see yourself like, coming to this industry and taking over the business and everything? Was it like transport was a big passion of yours from young, or what? How was it for you?
Passionate about transport, bro.
Hey, you never know, man. They are enthusiasts.
Yeah, the bus enthusiasts.
Yeah, and we'll get to them. But I would say that for me, the short answer is no. I was actually in the advertising and marketing line. I still am, but when I graduated from uni, I actually went into an advertising agency.
Okay.
Yeah, and I worked there for 5 years. And then stayed in the industry for another 3 more years before my parents said, either you come back or we close the company. It's the typical second generation story.
I see.
Yeah. So in a way, the passion was never there in terms of either running a transportation company or being part of the industry. And that's something that I still, in a way, struggle with today. I think that there's a bit of Stockholm syndrome, right? Because I've been doing this now for about 5 years, full time. I've come to love it. I've come to love the opportunities that come with it, the challenges that come with it. But the passion was never burning since young. I'm a bit like that. That individual that's parachuted into that position. Not because of merit.
I never heard that in Singapore. It's a meritocracy.
Just thinking of like an analogy that I could come from
another country,
from social media.
Okay.
So for me, it was more of just trying to learn about the industry as I led the company, which you can imagine is not the wisest way to run a company. But such was the case for me. Because my parents were saying that we're going to go. You have to figure this out yourself.
But then which aspect of it have you come to love? Like is it the transport, the vehicles, or the fact that you're moving people, or is, like advertising and the marketing side of things? What have you come to love about the business?
I would say the most important thing is the fact that the parallel between advertising / marketing as well as what I do now in the transportation line is that service factor. I do have a love for providing, service to people to at least resolve one form of headache, a day, right? Be it commute or trying to solve how to get their business out into the social media space a bit better. I think for me, to be able to bring people from home to their workplace or from the MRT line to the workplace while it may seem very mundane and in a way a very insignificant part of each person's day, it's critical, right, for that person to get to work, to earn their living, or for the company to continue functioning and having staff members to be at the workplace itself.
Yeah.
I think there is a certain value to that is very often overlooked, especially in today's society, right? We're very much focused on, for lack of a better word, bigger things. And physical tasks like these don't actually occupy people's minds. And to me, there is that beauty to it because you're doing something that people don't often notice, but it's so critical for them to just be able to do what they need to get done.
No, I mean, one of the big things people talk about why they don't want to work in Singapore, or expats who leave Singapore, is the weather is just too hot to get around. And we've grappled so long with like that last mile, how to get from the MRT to your office, and then we had to ban PMDs and all that. So I feel it's something that we are still struggling with, and we still need new solutions for. Yeah. So I don't think at all that it's something that we won't be grappling with for a long time.
And I think for anyone who thinks, Singapore really got places like that, man, because I only can say that with certainty because I used to work at Airline House. Which is it's like the easternmost part of Singapore civilization that I never even knew existed. And there, I think there was still one or two public buses that went in, but after a certain point in time, I think it comes like once every 45 minutes. Then you walk out, it's just like, you're like, where the hell am I? And there were a lot of private buses that would take staff out. At 5:30, you see the exodus of staff, just going in.
But the buses drive past as you're walking.
That's why. I'm sweating and all that. Like, I never signed up for private bus. But yeah, it is. And I can imagine even Tuas South and like even like places like Raffles Marina, the club, which sounds like it's in the CBD, but it's not. It's in Tuas. And I remember once after I was trying to get a Grab from there, and you just can't get a Grab. You can't get a Grab. So there are still a lot of places like that. And even now, Tengah, I don't know whether you all operate in Tengah.
Yes, we do.
Oh, you do? Yeah. Because it sounds so alien, right? Hearing like Singaporeans complaining that they have no amenities, like it's like a war zone like that. And you think, but that's in Singapore. So there are still spaces like that.
Correct.
So when you wanted to kind of, do things differently, was there a lot of pushback from like your family?
I think with multi-generational business, there are always going to be disagreements and differences in opinion. So the short answer again is yes. I think at the start of our collaboration, our being my parents and I, there was a lot of trying to understand each other, right? And because they had led the business for almost 4 decades at the point in time, there was that mindset that, look, we've done this for a long time.
Right? You need some young punk.
No, really. You need to chill. You got great ideas, but can we take a bit of time to think this through? Right. Conversely, on my side, it was we're in a different time now. We don't have time to sit back and wait or just test bait something for too long. Right. Some decisions we have to make quickly as well. So a lot of times we were just trying to meet each other in the middle when it came to that sense of urgency versus a more, I know how this goes, let's take a bit of time, let's figure this out. So that was where we often would clash at the start. And a lot of times we had to have very lengthy discussions that spill over into, family dinner time, weekends.
Sure.
Yeah. So because it's inevitable, it's hard to say like, okay, we're going to have a discussion now. We can agree to disagree. Let's go home and have dinner. Let's talk about something else, right? It's not going to be possible, as much as we ideally like it to be. So I think at the end of the day, while my runway with them was not very long, before my parents stepped out of the business, I did learn a lot that I had to adjust to in terms of running a business as such. And like I said, even though it was short, I'm very appreciative of everything that they've taught me. And they still continue to teach me in the shadows.
Senior minister lah.
Mentor.
Minister mentor.
Director mentor.
Yeah. Because my mom, for example, she's based in Australia. permanently because my sister's there. And sometimes I get a text message or like a Facebook message from her with like a liner that just says like, hey, regarding this new policy you introduced, right?
Oh, I see.
Or she'll send me like a Straits Times article just to tell me about the trends in the industry. I mean, I think that they will never shed that parent hat, right? They're always thinking like, okay, I need to look out for my son, etc. And I get where it's coming from. So I think I do appreciate that. And it's just also a lot to do with perspective at the end of the day. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. So like you know, like the one thing that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're hiring also, you mentioned something in the press about wanting to attract local talent, right? And why was that also a focus?
I think for me, the most important thing with this campaign, right, was that if we could bring in 100% local drivers with that hiring campaign we launched, that would be a success beyond our wildest dreams at that point in time. Now it sounds like completely, ordinary. Like, yeah, you did that. I mean, with the amount of reception that we got because of the exposure to the from the media, which we are very thankful for, it has become a lot more achievable. But at that point in time, the landscape was as such that the foreign drivers were making up more and more of the workforce within the bus drivers industry, so to speak. So I remember telling my team at that point, if we can hire locals and young local drivers, that would be a moonshot. Like I would be very happy with that. Yeah. So that's how we actually ended up being able to do so because of the media exposure. But for us to be able to bring in local drivers was important because I feel that if we don't do that, we will end up with a smaller and smaller time frame where we can continue to employ local drivers that want to operate and drive buses as a full-time job. The reason is because the pay at that point in time was much too low to justify, entering the industry. And the hours were long. And bluntly speaking as well, the social perception of being a bus driver is not the most glamorous one, right? So the factors are against anybody who is even interested in joining the industry, whether it's curiosity, passion, or pure interest.
Yeah.
So we had to raise some sort of incentive to be able to see if we can bring in the local drivers. Yeah. And for us, when we realized that there was this community of local young individuals that were very passionate about operating heavy vehicles, it caught us by surprise, but in a pleasant way.
Are you talking about the enthus, the bus enthus?
Them as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I have great respect for them. But in addition to the bus enthusiasts, there are a group of Singaporeans. I say a group as if they're a small group, but there's actually a large proportion of Singaporeans who just love driving bus.
Yeah.
And they say that it's very cathartic. They say that when they drive buses, they feel like they are operating this vehicle that, is powerful, but yet they're doing like a social good, transporting people, whether it's students, tourists, etc. Right?
And you didn't, so because the bus enthusiasts, I think they are a certain group. What you're saying is this is a wider group of people, because like at the recent event of yours that I attended, I met some bus enthusiasts and they were amazing to talk to. Like they know the details, the year, the model. But what you're saying is there's a pool of people who maybe are not too focused on those details.
Correct.
They just like the job that you and your team weren't aware of.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
So when we started to interview candidates, right, we had a big group, a majority of them who were below the age of, let's say, 35, for example, and always operating some sort of heavy vehicles, whether it was tankers, whether it was, trucks, your cement trucks, etc. And they were actually doing this because they loved driving heavy vehicles.
Wow.
But for other factors, like, for example, of course, it's very physical to operate, let's say, a trailer, for example.
Yeah.
They had to figure out whether this was something they could do permanently. Yeah. And then on the other hand, we also had a group of individuals who were totally not in any form of transportation industry. We had a couple of bankers that actually came into us.
Yeah.
And I looked at their salary on their resume and I said, you know that what I'm offering is not
high,
this.
but not that high.
It's less one number. The first number.
One digit.
Yeah. I literally said that. Right.
Yeah.
And the guy looked at me and he said, yeah, I know, because I saw the news piece or whatever it was. And I said, so what are you looking for? I can't match your salary. And he said, I've always been driving buses in the week on the weekends. Right? I did it out of interest. I just did 1 or 2 trips. I have a vocational license, which was like mind blowing for me.
That's the class 4, is it?
Yeah. No, class 4. And then you need to have a bus driver's vocational license, BDVL, right? To be able to operate a bus for private transportation. And there were 3 individuals. They actually went to the trouble of getting those licenses before they even came in for the interview and before this whole campaign had even launched. So it wasn't like they got it just to get this job. And so I asked them, I said, but you're going to take a huge pay cut. And he said, I know, but I don't want to do this job anymore. It's very stressful. And driving buses is what frees my mind. Is what gives me that feeling of satisfaction. And one of them actually said to me that now he has the ability of justifying it to his parents, and this is the one chance he has, which really gave us a lot of meaning to what we were doing.
And that number of like 5K as a salary, because I know they also depend on your salary depends on the bus size that you drive. But that 5K thing that was in the news, why that number?
Actually, this is a good question. I think it was, number one, it was based on a calibration of a significant bump from what is the current market rate based on 6 trips a day.
Okay.
Yeah. So 6 trips a day is what I would say is the base minimum that a full-time bus driver in transport industry would have to do. So 2 trips in the morning, 2 for lunchtime, and 2 in the evening is a very simple example.
I see.
Yeah. So not only did we raise the quantum in terms of salary amount, we raised the per trip salary rate that a driver would get in Singapore. And I think that's what also attracted a lot of the candidates, because the initial report that came out in December, January, February, the response on, for example, social media, and also people who were talking about it was that, to get that salary, you have to do a lot of trips. But the truth of the matter is that we also had capped or defined the number of trips that you would be able to, or you would have to do to get $5,000 a month. Anything on top of that, you get paid in addition to the amount that we advertise.
I see.
So, I mean, more than just being local, some of them are even like uni graduates, right? So, beyond jobs aside of that, but even uni graduates who studied probably nothing related to transport, right?
Yeah.
The interviews, do you tell them like, was there any talking about applying their skills in university to this job or anything like that? Or was there any expectation that the uni degree would come in handy as a driver and all?
No, actually, I would say this is one of the few existing jobs that don't actually look at academic qualifications. So we do have candidates who will have primary school qualifications only, but very good at handling heavy vehicles, because part of the interview process is also being able to physically, operate a bus in a controlled environment and seeing how they respond to it.
Also, there is a test, there's a test element to it. Oh, okay,
yes,
okay.
Correct.
Oh.
Yeah. So for us, when the candidate comes in, aside from a face-to-face interview, they also have to do it's almost like a practical test that you do for your driving license.
Got it.
Yeah. So for us, not so much the application of any uni degree qualifications. In fact, the candidates that had uni qualifications, they were almost ashamed to say that they had uni qualifications, because they felt like they were overqualified for the position. And we had to constantly tell them that, look, apart from being a bus driver, down the line, as the years go by, the progression is also there. for you to go into the corporate side of our business as well. Because not everybody wants to stay as a bus driver for a long time, right? And some of them want to be, for example, safety supervisors, operational managers or executives, customer service, for example, where they can apply the practical experience and knowledge of the bus driver years and job onto what they're doing in future roles.
Oh, so there is progression as well.
Yes.
So I mean, the one thing that I'm sure it may have come up in the readers is that if you are offering a significant bump, changing almost like the salary and compensation structure for your drivers as a business, how does that work? Like, what is the impact on your business?
I don't take salary.
No. He's eating a salad just before this. That's his one meal today.
It's an OnlyFans account and all that. That kind of
yeah. Talking about that. No, I would say that part of the planning as well. I mean, you go back to the point that I raised earlier about us having to plan before then, right? Part of it was, of course, managing or massaging the message, right, to our competitors, etc. But part of it also was looking at the financial numbers, because that was a critical component, and Harish, is a very good point you brought up, because a lot of people talk about the drivers, right? But the one side of the equation that no one talks about is, okay, you have the drivers now.
Yeah.
Then what are they going to drive? We don't have 30 buses that are just sitting in our yard waiting to be driven, right? Those have drivers. That's how our business earns money. So we had to also plan for not just the increase in salaries, the bigger workforce in the company, but also acquiring enough vehicles for them to operate as well. So I know I'm not answering your question, but the price tag became quite significant. And if I were to be very honest about it, nobody believes me when I say this, but the truth of the matter is it came from the company's coffers and revenue. We had to take a hit in terms of the amount of profit the company generates. But obviously we do it in a prudent manner. Like we don't operate at a loss.
Okay, so it's not growth at all costs, because it's not something that is, just a promotional, when Grab first came, they give you all these promos, and it's not going to last. What you're saying is there was prudent calculations that you all did and planning.
Yeah. I'm not a financial person, so prudence for me is just as long as there's no negative sign at the end of my SOA, right? I'm fine.
I mean, that's way better than a lot of startups out there.
But I think also, just to add on to the point, right, Harish, I think for us also, it was important to maintain the quality of service and standard that my company or the company offers our customers and future customers, right? Because the truth of the matter is, there are a lot of drivers in both the public and private space that are getting a little bit older, right? And that does result in certain scenarios that either compromise safety or otherwise. And for Westpoint, this is not a push of the brand, but for Westpoint, we've always focused on safety being one of the core tenets. And to be able to do that, you need to have drivers that can deliver that level of service in terms of safety and comfort. Right. So for us, definitely there was some strategic intent in investing that much into a larger, younger workforce, and that is, to directly put it, for future growth.
Yeah.
Right. But we are investing first. Whatever comes next after that is going to be taken as it comes along, whether it's growth in business or otherwise.
I see.
But right now we're focusing on our customers, existing, and how we can provide the best service for them. And we're starting with our people first, and of course the product.
And you've managed to fill up all the slots for these 30 drivers that you're recruiting already.
Yes. So we've filled them up, the slots. And also now we're looking for more.
Okay.
Yeah, because we realized that there's still space for a bit more scaling as well. Yeah. So
and how many applications did you get to fill up those 30?
As of 2 weeks ago, it was 1,400.
Over the course of how many weeks that it opened up?
that was since December when we started.
1,400 applications.
Yeah.
So it's less than 1%
for 30 slots.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel like the primary school registration.
That's exactly. It's even more tough than that.
Yeah, maybe I should face it out next time. Phase one, phase two. You have a brother working for.
Do you recognize this bus? Are you entering everything?
Yeah. So the majority, of course, followed the exposure from the media. So obviously the majority of the candidates came in during the first few months. And I thought that it would kind of die down, but it's still been going quite strongly in terms of the number of new applicants we get on a regular basis.
Yeah. So as because even the concept of like minimum wage and rising cost of living and all, it is at the forefront of a lot of discussions. So as a business owner and running your own business, do you think that every business owner has a responsibility to address things like this? Or whether businesses should be run just for profit? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but what's your take on business?
It's a very loaded question.
I know.
How are your staff paid so far?
Dude, you're a guest on our show, okay?
When we go on your podcast, we'll...
Yeah, you start
Good answer. No, I think the very honest answer, and I always try not to sidestep these questions because I think that there is merit in being very transparent about it. The short and personal answer is yes. There is a responsibility amongst either business owners or business leads or anyone that is empowered to provide opportunities for others in this manner to do so. I think that if, for example, coming back to my example, if in the private transportation industry, people like myself who are, blessed or privileged to be able to make such decisions, if we don't do it, then, like I said just now, that window closes. And you can never reopen that window to hire young local drivers in, let's say, 10 years' time, if there's no such openings or no such possibilities or no such interest from the youngsters themselves. Yeah. Right? So, I might not be the most popular, it might not be the most popular opinion, but I always say, if you look at the construction industry right now and you offer a salary that is of the same amount that we offer for our drivers, for someone to enter the construction industry as a labor worker, it's going to be a challenge to find locals to do that. Right? You're going to have to raise that amount significantly, which then of course has other consequences and doubts and challenges, but that window has closed, if I were to be blunt about it. And for the transportation industry, we have that critical, window that we can still keep open to make sure that our talents and our drivers are kept local. I think there's merit to that.
So within that so-called bus and tool space, are you seen as like an Elon Musk kind of character? You walk around and they're, oh my God, it's Lionel. What's the perception or response has been to?
If anything, I'm seen as the poor Bill Gates, the most boring guy. Because for bus enthusiasts, right? And I'm going to offend the bus enthusiasts by saying this because I know only what I know. Their interest or their focus, it stems from the passion for the vehicles themselves. So they look at variety.
Okay.
They are very interested in anything that is either a bit more vintage or a bit more rustic or more authentic in terms of how to operate vehicles, heavy vehicles, especially buses. So for them, right, what we did when we bought a large number of the same type of buses is heresy. It's to them, it's so basically everyone tried the same. Where's the challenge in that? Yeah, again, like I said, I'm probably going to offend some of them, but to me, I think that their interest lies in being able to interact or at least experience different types of buses.
I see.
Like bird watching kind of, they want to see different types of.
Yes.
buses.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I mean, now also being referred to as Elon Musk, not necessarily a compliment.
Okay, I meant it as like the progressive, wow, super visionary, changing the game and all that.
I think if I bought, like I say, if I bought like 30 or 50 different buses, anti vehicles, right?
Then,
ironically, I'll be seen as the Elon Musk of it. But for them, it's like okay, so it's the same vehicle.
So
I take one picture and then that's it.
The last event I went for was when you were launching your hybrid bus.
Yes.
Was that also like blasphemous to the bus enthusiasts?
No. So I must be careful now not to all draw them in the same light. We're talking about them like they're the same person. but I think that for them, them again. So I think that for many bus enthusiasts, being able to experience something new and innovative also makes up what that passion is about, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about driving something that is seen as very large and clunky, but there's beauty in that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be something old, right? To them, what is a heresy would be something that is very vanilla, right? So, if it's something that is just run of the mill, then to them, I would say again, it wouldn't be the most interesting. So when we actually launched the hybrid bus, they were very interested in it because it's the first time a private transport operator actually, in a way, opened the doors for anybody to come and take a look at what is under the hood.
I see.
And of course, that's where it matters.
I mean, I had a great time talking to them, and shout out to any of them who I met over there, but I was blown away by how passionate they were about driving. I know one guy was so proud that I think when he starts driving a bus for public transport, he'll be the youngest bus driver. And he was like, then I was like, oh my God. Then I was asking them like, how long have you all loved buses and why do you love buses? And they were giving me answers like, it is something like what you said. You're driving something that is bringing people and bringing people around. And I think one of them drove a bus overseas, and he said he got all his friends, all bus enthusiasts, and they took the bus together, and he was driving. And I was like, oh my God, that is it's got a lot of depth, lah. It's not just like some shiny new object they want to go. And like I found it so refreshing that you're talking to these young folk who have so much passion for something that is not the most common, lah. Yeah, and it was great talking to them, and I think because last time
you invited them to the event and all as well.
Oh yeah. You were there, and I mean, I know there have been some videos of these bus enthusiasts wanting to get access to buses and can't get access and all, right?
Yeah.
So their passion is very deep, it goes very deep,
Yeah. And I think again, not to paint them on the same brush, but I would say that the intent from a lot of the bus enthusiasts in Singapore is actually to raise awareness of what makes for the best ride experience, right? And they're not always there just to, in a way, complete a series of pictures, right? Like chasing Pokemon cards, right? For them, yes, there is that thrill of being able to take pictures of as many types of bus models in Singapore as possible. But they're also very much engaged in discussions about certain makes and certain builds in our buses that could be improved on, or which one is better. Because there is, I would say that a lesser known fact about a lot of the buses in Singapore is that most of the European branded buses in both the public and private transportation industry are not actually made in Europe. So, for example, a Volvo bus that you see, whether it's by SMRT or Octa Transit, right? It's actually not made entirely in Europe before it's brought to Singapore. The chassis is actually made in Europe, and then it's exported to Malaysia, usually Malaysia. And then the body is actually built in Malaysia. And the build of the body is actually very customized to not just what the customer requires, but also what the skill sets of the bus builder or the company has as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that actually comes down to a lot of the hand-built or hand-woven materials that all of us or a lot of us actually overlook. So
it's like almost artisanal in some way.
It is. Wow. It is. Yeah. So I had the opportunity because recently we purchased a few Volvo buses. I had the opportunity to go down to Ipoh to look at a family business that's been around for 80 years, building buses. and seeing how the chassis actually, becomes a fully developed or fully built bus. And the amount of safety features, comfort features, customization that goes into, for example, where the seat is located, how many, more cm you want to push it back and front, the safety bars, umbrella holders, the safety, the steering wheel, of the drivers.
Yeah.
All these things are fully customized and hand built.
And also, there's no like huge factory where it's just like machines.
Not in this case.
Not in this case.
Yeah.
Oh.
So a bus build itself can take almost up to, sometimes a year or longer, depending on the amount of customers that are waiting for the buses. Yeah. Whereas in the Chinese manufacturing side, where we've also bought a number of buses, it's very like what you mentioned, it's an assembly line, right? And both have their pros and cons, but back to the question on the bus enthusiasts, they are more attracted to the former,
I see.
right? Because there's that beauty of that, like handcrafted object itself or product itself.
Also, when you go on like trips with family or friends and all that, do you always like, I must sit one bus on this trip and like experience what it's like and all? Is that become a job hazard for you?
For me, I would say that I am less picky on that because my butt has apparently less, nerves compared to the bus enthusiasts, because they really can tell you the difference, the vibrations.
Yeah.
Really? So the cushions definitely,
Yeah.
because that makes up the comfort factor. But at the end of the day, if the engine, right, it's one that it vibrates a lot or it produces a lot of sound. Most of us, we don't notice that. Or maybe we forgive, the noise, right?
Yeah.
But for the bus enthusiasts, they actually pay attention to that. And they can tell you that, look, this bus, right? It's a new bus, but look at how shaky it is. Or how much vibration.
Actually, that's great customer feedback in some ways. Like,
Yes.
immediately you know what the issues are, the small things that make up the experience.
Correct.
All that, right?
Even the finishing.
Yeah.
So again, I know I'm starting to lose you guys. I see your eyes glazing over. But the back, the back of the bus, for most of the coaches, I mean, I call it coaches because they're big buses, right? If you look at the back, they are all very customized. And much like your customized cars, right, with the kits and everything, the bus community also has that kind of interest in how the exterior of the bus looks. So to make it look a lot more sporty or a lot more fierce are some of the requirements from certain operators. Whereas others would prefer maybe a more, elegant look, depending on the experience they want to give their passengers.
All this is fascinating to me because I have a toddler, a boy, and
Yes.
they I just recently asked me why is the engine of the bus at the back, and I realized I don't know. I like in all my adult wisdom, I really can't explain to you. So then I had to go and start reading up and all that lah.
Yeah.
So all this stuff actually is stuff that I think, once if you take a lot of public transport, maybe you get numb to it. But then, when you go in a fresh pair of eyes, actually there's a lot of little details that make up the experience that is very important. Right?
Is there any like amazing fact about buses that no one knows about that you found like mind blowing?
Wow. I would say that a lot of the facts that I've found out about the product itself, right, comes in the technical specifications. So, like for example, the hybrid bus, right? The batteries in the brand that we've bought. So we've bought the hybrid bus from Yutong, which is a Chinese bus manufacturer, specializing in electric vehicles, right? The battery pack that they've actually installed in the bus has double protection, one in the form of a casing or a blanket that actually snuffs out oxygen. And this is mainly because if the battery does get punctured, like in a collision, there is no possibility of a fire starting. Because you know what happens when, like lithium batteries get punctured, right? You see them on the documentaries. That explosion is quite significant. So there's that first layer of protection, which to me was amazing because I feel that the amount of thought and research and the understanding of the practical nature of what needs to be protected has been put into a product like this. And then on top of that, they have roll bars that are almost indestructible, almost, right? And they've done experiments to show it. So to me, those things are what really moves the needle in terms of like what our company needs to deliver in terms of safety and comfort.
I see.
Yeah.
Is that the one with the collagen or something that you mentioned?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Collagen.
Collagen, yeah. What is in the where's the collagen?
I will tell you next time when I show you the
No, but it's part of that protective layer.
Yes,
or something.
correct. Yeah.
Oh.
So it actually prevents like oxygen from going in as well.
Yeah.
I see.
Collagen blanket.
Wow.
It's like like a casing.
Wow.
Ah.
So this is a innovation in your industry, right? It's considered a very big step forward in innovation, right?
Yes.
Like what what in the next 5 to 10 years do you think are like big innovations in your industry? Like, I mean, we were just talking to someone about driverless vehicles and I know AI and things like that. Like, what does innovation look like for your industry in the next 10 years?
I mean, I would love to be able to look that far, right, into that crystal ball, right? I think right now, and I'm trying to answer your question in a more structured way also.
Sure.
I think right now what we're seeing in terms of developments, at least in Singapore's market, two things. Number one, autonomous vehicles. So in Sentosa, for example, they recently launched a autonomous bus.
Oh wow!
Small one. But there's still a driver there. He doesn't touch the steering wheel, but he's just there for backup reasons in case something alright happens. But that bus or that vehicle is fully autonomous because the company that launched it is called WeRide, and they have been doing a lot of launches globally as well, right? So that's number one, autonomous vehicles. I think it's going to. There's only one direction it's going to go. It's going to ramp up, at least in Singapore, especially. The only constraint right now would be the infrastructure. And I also would say social acceptance of it. It's like what they say about planes, right? Planes can actually technically fly themselves now, but no one's going to step on a plane without a pilot, right? So that's the first one. Second one would be demand-based transportation. I think that is something that has been catching on in our industry with our customers because it allows for optimization of spend.
So you mean like ride sharing for buses, like book on demand kind of thing?
Yes, something like that. So for example, if let's say let's say I'm a customer of a bus transport provider, right?
Yeah.
And typically I have 50 large buses that transport my staff back and forth from office to MRT points or home daily. And let's say, for example, I just spend $1 million a year just to pay for these transportation needs. Not all the buses are fully occupied. In the past, there is no way to right-size the bus. But what demand-based transportation allows for, theoretically, is for the passenger to actually book the bus. Or at least tell
register
them, I'm going to be able to take the bus.
Then you can send the bus according to the size.
Yes. So they right-size the bus and then they charge the customer accordingly. Which technically cannot be more than what is currently being provided.
So it's a win-win situation for both sides. Like you don't overpay for unused capacity.
Yes.
And the other side also, you can allocate your buses accordingly.
Correct. And also there's that sustainability factor. Right? I mean, emissions with smaller vehicles versus larger. And things like that.
So going back to something that you mentioned just now about hiring local drivers, right? Because, one thing that you keep hearing about, how Singapore needs to survive as a country, like ROI must be maximized. We must be efficient. And I can imagine there being an argument that if there is a supply of foreign workers who are willing to do it for a lower fee, why not as a business focus on ROI? And I know there are certain caps and quotas, right? But is there any reason why you think it's important that Singaporeans do jobs like, driving buses, like public transport, and those sort of jobs? Or is that something that is not really a big reason why you would hope there are more local bus drivers?
I think with any industry in the service line, right, having locals is always going to be an advantage in terms of interaction with passengers, in terms of the road knowledge, for example. Not to say that foreign drivers cannot get to that standard, but when you've grown up in a certain geographical place or country or city for your whole life, right? You tend to be more familiar with the roads. You tend to be more confident. Whereas if you were to work in a foreign city, it takes a bit of adjustment, and that final standard is also subjective to how well the person adjusts to the cultural as well as nuance in that country itself that he or she is working in. So to me, that's the first thing. I think that with the interaction with our passengers, understanding why certain requirements are in place and being able to quickly adapt to requirements in our industry, I feel that having local drivers are always going to be an advantage. Yeah, because if, for example, if there is a situation where the passenger is not comfortable with speaking in the language that the foreign driver is proficient in, then you have a situation where there's a communication breakdown, and that can often lead to operational issues, right? If, let's say, for example, I speak to a driver that may not be able to speak English or Mandarin in my case, right? And I'm trying to tell him, can you just wait for a few minutes because my colleague is running late, and the driver has no idea what I'm saying, and he just follows what he's been told to do, which is, okay, at this time I need to move. Then that person is going to miss the bus, you know, and then of course customer satisfaction, etc. So from a transport provider standpoint or service provider standpoint, that's always going to be important as well. Yeah, the confidence to deal or to speak or interact with passengers is something that we cannot overstate. Yeah, and then of course number two, I think also just being able to provide locals with a job that they're passionate about, rather than have it taken away from, you know, nothing wrong with foreigners, but in this case, with a non-local that is willing to do it for a lower rate, just because of that lower rate, to me, while it makes a lot of financial sense, is exchanging a short-term benefit for a long-term advantage. Yeah, because don't forget that when you have foreign drivers or talent that come to Singapore to work, it's not always that they will stay for a long time. It's not always that they'll make this a lifelong career, whether by choice or by compulsion, right? The Ministry of Manpower could decide not to renew their work pass, or, you know, maybe things at home change and they need to return. You know, so at the end of the day, if you constantly have to look for new talent, then it's going to be quite disruptive to the level of service that you have to provide as well. So the ROI would be in cheaper talent, but then the leakage would be in the transition, training new drivers, losing a driver that your passengers are familiar with, right? Understanding the road requirements, and the amount of training and retraining you have to do is quite significant, especially with a large vehicle. Let's not forget the safety factor.
Oh, I thought this was a great answer, because it's like, we just spoke to Ho Kwon Ping, you know, of Banyan Tree on the podcast, and I think he has a very similar philosophy of, like, you hire the locals who operate in the local hotels in each place, because there are things about each culture that you cannot beat the locals' knowledge in. And like what you said about, you know, understanding the roads and the language, all that, it makes such a big difference in how the customer experience is. And it's more than just about, let's just support local, but it's really about, because there is a tangible advantage to having the local operating the bus that way.
And also, I think in terms of a societal benefit, because like one thing in Singapore now, it feels like that it's getting even more stratified, you know, based on socioeconomic tier, based on profession. And I mean, being even in media, we do get the question, oh, you all used to be in corporate, oh, you're doing media, oh, it's your hobby, is it? Oh, you know, it's your hobby. And it almost feels like, no, I mean, this is still a job. And I think if we only have a tier of jobs that are done by foreigners, a tier of job done by locals, that's also, I think, then it makes our society quite one-dimensional. Yeah, and not taking anything away from foreigners who come here wanting to earn a better living, but I also feel that, if there's more variation in work, in jobs, in less stigma for certain roles, I think that's good. And I love reading articles about bus drivers who say they've been driving for 40 years. I think there was one article, driving for 40 years, he's literally seen his passengers grow up. You know, and I'm like, that is insane. You know, that just, it's like, you're like this kind of, you're almost like the blood going around the heartlands, you know. You just the blood, the capillaries and the vessel, you know, and you are the blood that's going through, and that was something I came up with. I don't think it was an article. It's just a spur of the moment brilliance. But it does feel like there's something very connective there.
Are there any societies or countries where you see bus drivers or public transport operators being treated in a way that you hope, Singapore would treat its bus drivers as well?
Oh, that's a good question. I think in Australia, the way the public perceives of most individuals in any kind of jobs, right, is a lot more equal. You know, I mean, not to take anything away from specific tradesmen, right? But then, you could be a plumber, you could be a tile layer, you could be a construction worker, bus driver in Australia, and the amount of respect, the way that the other locals interact with you is equivalent to you being an accountant, a social media influencer, for example, a podcast host, or even a doctor or lawyer. Obviously, with specific nuances, but that respect and the lack of a discrimination, I guess, is very much more diminished. It's much more palpable, more obvious, right? Because there isn't the perception that, you drive a bus or you do a certain trade, so therefore you are not the same as us, right? So I think that there's a lot of respect for that, and the way that they themselves, as in the bus drivers, conduct themselves during when they're doing their job. It also reflects that confidence that I think is a result of how society treats them as well.
How do they, do you have any specific examples of what they do that make them stand out? Yeah.
So for example, if let's say you go on a group tour, right, in Perth or in anywhere in Australia, right, the bus driver is actually also a tour guide. So they have like a microphone, something like this, right? That is like positioned close to them while they drive the bus. So the dude is driving and he's talking to you about what he can see.
There's certain pride, lah.
And they're not doing it just to run through a script or just repeating the same thing. You can tell that they have like interest in educating or explain to you what you can see around that specific area that you are traveling on, right? And I think that doesn't come with just high pay, etc. I think it also comes with taking pride in your job and understanding that if you do this well, people either get entertained or people have a positive impression or people learn something about your country. I think that it's often a two-way thing. As much as you like to think that we are all very independent and autonomous in how we think, a lot of times how people perceive us, as the bus drivers, right? It also affects how they perform their jobs. Yeah, because you imagine if like day in, day out, everyone comes on board, they don't talk to you, they either complain to you or they verbally abuse you. There's no way you're going to be someone who's going to take pride in what you do, because the message that you're getting is that you are just a lower tier individual or professional in our society, and we can treat you how we want to. I'm not saying that's what happens in Singapore. I'm just saying.
So you are trying to do that, as a business, right? Trying to raise the profiles of bus drivers as well. What can be done at, say, the government level and even day-to-day people? What can they do better to, reach that level of so-called enlightenment about the profession?
Wow. That's a big question. The government, I can't speak for the government.
If you are Minister of Transport,
for one day.
If you are Minister of Transport,
No, I think that the government are doing what they can, right? For lack of better terms, right? I think that what can always be done better, whether it's the public transport operators, the government, or even the private transport operators like myself. What we can do better is to actually recognize that there is this situation now where our drivers are, they are being pushed a bit too hard physically, right? They're not given that recognition, for example, for their age and their experience, and given perhaps more senior positions that are more catered towards their physical conditions.
That means senior positions, not as a driver,
for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
So progression
on the corporate side or like on the business side or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. I think that there is a need for operators, like I said, across the public and private space to be able to provide progression, and that then comes alongside with it recognition as well, right? For drivers who are committing their whole lives to, in a way, power this industry of ours, right? Because only then can they also gain that kind of respect for themselves and also from others that interact with them. I think that's the first thing, because we need to be able to do that so that the younger generation can come in knowing that there is some progression. And ultimately, we're all looking for some sort of a progression in terms of our career, regardless of the industry. And the youngsters are looking at what happens to the older drivers also. And they're saying, if this guy at whatever age, 65, 70, he's still doing the same thing that I'm doing, does that mean that I'm going to be doing this for 40 years, 30, 20 years? I don't want to do that. Right? And so I think that for us, again, it comes back to the question about what can people in that position do. We need to be able to open up those doors for progression, for recognition, and also for them to gain that kind of respect from outsiders of the public.
So what do you make of I don't know when it happens, but addressing public bus drivers as bus captains? Do you think that is just whether there's any impact at all, or it's still a step in the right direction?
I think that with anything that is looking to raise some sort of either social credibility or recognition, right? It cannot be a single dimension action, right? So you can find synonyms for positions, but at the end of the day, if, for example, the pay is very low or people just don't see it as a glamorous job, you can call it bus president or whatever, right? No one's gonna really say, oh,
Minister of Buses, bus minister,
Minister of Bus, PC 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it's, you know what I mean?
Permanent Secretary of 137. Yeah,
bus expert.
Yeah, I see. It sounds like an extreme scenario, but you see, that's what happens when you take just one dimension and you raise it up and nothing else follows.
Yeah.
Right. So in that scenario, I'm not saying again that anything is better or worse, but I'm saying that if, let's say, you take that example of being called a bus captain, again, nothing wrong with that, versus bus driver and having a higher salary, I think the choice is quite obvious. What and any individual who would be only having those two options would take. So I think that, instead of seeing it as, is that enough, or is that in the right direction, I think you have to see as, is that enough in terms of what more can be done? Yeah, because the short answer is not enough.
I see. Wow. Wow, awesome. And I mean, like right now, the applications are still open, right? So if people wanted to apply, where should they go?
Okay. There are a few things. So firstly, obviously, you can drop us a message on any of our social media platforms. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, on LinkedIn as well. Because which business isn't on it now?
As Westpoint Transit.
Westpoint Transit.
Okay, that's what you look for.
Yeah, correct. We will reply, and then we will drop you a Google Docs link for you to fill out, and then we'll call you in for an interview. Yeah.
Okay. And you all have a website also?
Yes.
Any of those? So Instagram?
Facebook,
and
LinkedIn.
Okay. And the website is?
westpointbus.com.sg.
It'll all be in the description.
Yeah.
I apologize that it's so long. It's my parents thought of it, so it's not my fault.
Just blame the parents.
West Point is like the military school in the US, all right? It's,
where
you have to differentiate.
Prince Harry went, right?
West Point. I don't know.
Did he go?
I mean,
no,
the top
Prince
military.
William.
I
think Prince William.
Correct, yeah.
West Point. Was it based on West Point?
Actually, it's one of the most common questions I get.
Yeah.
And I'm going to disappoint you by saying I don't know. Because when I ask my parents, they actually never give me a clear answer. I got a feeling it is, or it was, but they never really thought it through. So it's one of those similar response you get when you ask your parents where the babies come from.
Did the business start in the west of Singapore?
It is in the west of Singapore. It still is. Yeah. So we are known as in Westpoint is known to service clients that are located predominantly in the west. But I wouldn't say that was deliberate. That was just at that point in time in the 80s. It was where they set up base, and therefore, part of least resistance was customers that are nearby. At that time, got no social media and internet.
I think businesses back then, they were a lot more literal. Like hotel group, something, hotel builders group or something like that. Very, very, this is what we do. This is where we are based.
Correct.
But I mean, it's cool that it's associated. I mean, the name is top military school.
Yeah.
It's like how Eton College and all that. Now it's Eton House Preschool, that kind of thing. Similar associations.
I like that you're helping me to like
Market it.
rationalize my company's name.
I mean, all these.
Shout out to my dad for.
We deal with a lot of writing and all that, and all these things.
The names matter, man.
Names matter.
They do.
Thoughts.
Yeah, they do.
Every
They do.
character, everything in the story, the name matters.
And I would fully agree with you because I come from the advertising line, right? And so we help clients do their branding, and I get the importance of that.
Yeah.
But I think also to the point about how the name actually matters, the brand for Westpoint actually has been more synonymous with the service rather than the name now. So I think that's something that is the other side of branding, right? Like it takes time.
Yeah.
You need to build that equity over, in our case, 40 years. Yeah. So that's what we're more known for. But yeah, people still ask me if it's the military academy, and I always tell them I really don't know.
Yes. Just end the conversation there. Yeah.
No, it never ends there because I tried that before.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and then they ask, oh, okay, so but why not other military academy? Why not? Then I dig myself into a deeper hole. You see.
You tell them about the stringent, almost militaristic selection process. Only less than 1% of candidates make it through.
Every time a passenger comes on board, our bus driver, salute.
Respect for drivers.
I'll take all this into account. Actually, I like this free service I'm getting. Is free branding.
Yeah, exactly.
We provide a lot of free advice to the government and all that in this podcast also. That they most of the time ignore.
But it's free. So many brilliant pieces for NDP, for government, but
it's ignored.
But we know they listen. We know they listen. Like that. But yeah, man.
Cool, man. It was fun talking about this, and I mean, hoping to see more of what transpires in terms of innovation and all for your industry also.
I appreciate you guys having me over. This industry has never been the poster boy for something sexy or known as anything too modern, right? And so I think for me as the second generation business lead, it's important for people to at least know what we do. It doesn't have to be my company, even for my competitors or counterparts. I think it's important for us to at least, if nothing, attract more local drivers, and also other staff like corporate staff, operational staff as well. Those are important as well.
So I mean, it was great having you, because you and your team are doing some cool stuff. So I'm sure that even our listeners will appreciate this. We'll put all the links in the show notes. But of course, we can't end any podcast without the one Shiok Thing segment.
Yes.
Which we gave you a heads up, so you have no excuse. But we will go first. We'll go first to give you some last minute thinking to do.
Sure, thank you.
Yes, Terence, do you have your...
the Paris Olympics just closed not too long ago. And I'm sure you all saw the handover where Tom Cruise took the Olympic flag from Paris and then, took a plane and then airdropped it into Hollywood, LA. And then after that, there was a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert on a stage, right, to commemorate it. I didn't realize until recently that there was actually also another concert that also happened around that, the LA 28 thing. It was actually Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre performing on Venice Beach. For this.
So, as part of the Olympics?
As part of the Olympics, the ceremony, there was a Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre segment.
I know that Snoop Dogg featured.
Snoop Dogg was there.
Was all over.
He was.
He was a commentator for NBC or something.
And he was everywhere.
So after that, I guess he flew to LA to perform for this concert, and he was just decked out in white with the Olympic rings and wearing a 6-colored flag on the crib side, on the left side of his hands. And Dr. Dre, I don't know whether to laugh or to cringe or what, because they're not young, right? And they are singing songs about with all the stuff
that classic songs.
Snoop Dogg loves to sing about all his hits and all the gang life and all that, and then talking. And this is the LA 28 Olympics compared to what we just saw in Paris, which was equestrian with the Palace of Versailles in the background, and then suddenly we got Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre on Venice Beach.
Then even like Tom Cruise parachuting, he looked like he was very uncomfortable. Right.
And then this one is like in the background you can see got people in bikinis dancing there to Snoop Dogg's song, and this is what the Olympics in 2020 is about.
I must say I love it though. I love that it was Snoop that did it, right?
Oh, yeah?
Because I think he's one of the few individuals that can literally like bridge two
Correct.
All
Yeah.
generations.
two different generation, also two different cultures, right?
Yeah.
Like in Paris, right? He was actually like, I think he was on a horse during one of the equestrian event, and it looks so weird because obviously his image is so different, right?
Yeah.
But for some reason it worked, and it didn't look. At least to me, it didn't look too cringy.
Yeah.
I thought as if I am a commentator.
But Snoop Dogg has been doing commentary of sports and athletics for a few years already, which is awesome, lah.
Yeah.
So it did feel like it was organic to it, lah. And Snoop
And
Dogg,
he opened the breaking competition, the breakdancing competition. He was the one that came and started it, lah. They have a new thing where they drop a stick or something.
The stick they just pound on the ground.
Yeah. And then breakdancing was kind of like one of the funniest segments that came out of the Olympics.
And it's not going to be in LA 2028.
So the whole thing was just, it's my one Shiok Thing because it's just funny. Like,
Okay.
I like how you led with Tom Cruise, and then actually it was about Snoop Dogg. So you brought me on a journey. I was like, where are we going? He's like, Snoop Dogg.
Because it caught me by surprise. I didn't know that this concert happened. I thought it stopped at like Red Hot Chili Peppers. Then suddenly there's this Snoop Dogg segment, the Dr. Dre. Singing
I didn't even know, is it?
Mother, they can't say the F word, so they mother busting, Dr. Dre and all that. So it's just funny. It's one of those things,
Oh, awesome. My one Shiok Thing is like a lot less celebratory. It was a recent episode of The Journal, which is a podcast that is done by Spotify and Wall Street Journal. So every episode is like 15 to 20 minutes about a particular topic that they deep dive in. So I listened to this episode recently called The Slaves Sending You Scam Texts. And it was all around an interview they had with someone who actually escaped a scam center in Myanmar. So basically, he's this Ethiopian guy who was applying for a bunch of jobs from Ethiopia. He has a bachelor's degree in computer engineering, a master's degree in IT or information something IT related. He saw a job ad for a job in Thailand working for an e-commerce company. And it was going to pay him 1,500 USD, which was a lot because he comes from a small village in Ethiopia. He flew there and he was put up at a hotel. At midnight, he gets taken and told to go somewhere. And he said by the next day, they were crossing a river. And then he said they confiscated his passports and he ended up in Myanmar at a scam center, which is essentially this huge building that is fully guarded. And he said they were told very explicitly that you have been conned, you have been tricked, and you are not going anywhere. You're going to work for us, and if you don't meet your daily targets, you will get punished. And the punishment was in the form of beatings. So he said he was working 16 hours a day as a love scammer. So they were all given personas and pictures of this one woman persona, and they just had to message multiple people a day, and they were different teams, like the initial message. Once you hook them in, you pass them on, and the only way they got an interview with him was because after 1.5 years, where at some point he tried to team up with everyone else and went on strike, but in the end they just got thrown into confinement where they were hung by handcuffs for a few days. And in the end, they released him because they said, okay, if you pay us a ransom, we'll release you for free. So he managed to cobble together 7,000 US, and all they did was they brought him back to Thailand and let him go. And what this episode talks about is how ridiculous it is that this place actually operates like just a regular industrial area. And these buildings were apparently built specifically for scam centers and low-level criminals to run their scam centers. And it's just in a certain part of Myanmar that is, you can't even say unregulated. The government says they're regulated, but the government is run by a military. So it's just mind-boggling to what extent this happens. And it's all not even done underground. Apparently from the Thai border, you can look and see those complexes.
With the big sign.
Yeah. And it's called KK Park. And then there's KK Park 2, KK Park 3. So it's even expanding.
Wow.
And they are just scam centers, and there's no one clamping down on them, and other countries can't go in and clamp down because it's not under their jurisdiction.
Yeah. You've done before, as in you've accepted these friends on Facebook.
Yes, okay. So I have Terrence.
I know because sometimes I'll get I'll get this like friend request. Then they say, "Oh, Harish Chilani is a mutual friend." Now,
Okay, it was a time in my life where I was single and desperate. Okay, if I see a good-looking person. Years ago,
years ago.
But it was happening. Every few days, I'll just get this friend request and I'll say, hey, thank God, some common friend who also got duped. I'm like, okay lah, must be legit lah. Accept. Then after a while, I was like, you know what? These people are fucking, they hardly post anything and all. Then I started getting people like Terrence like, hey, you know this person? I'm like, no. You're a friend of Facebook. I'm like, fuck. But
you are part of the problem.
Thankfully, I haven't gotten scammed. But yeah, so it's very kind of like uneasy listening to this. And yeah, it's just interesting lah. Like a peek into like this darker side of love scams.
Yeah.
Because you hear a lot about people who get scammed, but here is someone who's almost like a slave lah, being forced to do this. He knew what he was doing was wrong, but it's either do that or get beaten lah.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about your one Shiok thing?
Okay, so mine's actually a lot. Mine's a lot more personal. On last weekend, I have two young kids. And last weekend we actually went to Singapore's only crocodile farm. I'm not sure if you all know it exists. Like, do you all know that Singapore's?
When I was young, I think.
Yeah. So the one that I'm assuming we're all the same age, right? That we know of was in Jurong, right? So this one's actually in the what is it? Neo Lim Chu Kang area. Area, right? And basically this crocodile farm has 20,000 crocodiles at any given time. And it's actually a family-run business. So it's not a public attraction.
20,000 crocodiles?
Yeah, 20,000 crocodiles. And basically they are one of the suppliers for crocodile leather products around the world.
Oh wait, I think I've been.
Yeah.
And then tanks, right? Then small little tanks and it's like rows of it, right?
Yeah.
I've been. And
it's like both amazing because the crocodiles are actually treated quite well given the situation that they are in. But more importantly, you get to feed the crocodiles like these like chicken, dead chickens that you can actually toss like near the crocodiles, right? And some of them are huge. Yeah. Like the biggest one was apparently, according to the owner, he was 65 years old. The crocodile is 65 years old. And he can't even be moved out of the tank that he's in. Oh, wow. Because it would kill him. Oh. So because crocodiles, their adrenaline actually kicks in very quickly. I'm talking from a non-expert standpoint. But what happens is if they were to move the crocodile, he would be filled with so much adrenaline, he would die. So they have to leave him in this tank, but he's growing. So he's almost going to outgrow this tank that he's in.
He's still growing?
He's still growing, yeah.
Crocodiles grow for life?
I don't know if it's for life, but they apparently can keep growing, especially male crocodiles. And he looks like one of those like crocodile horror movies waiting to happen. Like he will come out one day and eat everybody. And so basically like the whole place has, like I said, 20,000 crocodiles. And you get to experience like not just the adult ones, but also you get to see like the eggs. And they crack open the eggs and then you can see like the jelly and everything inside as well. And it's actually quite enriching. I know this is sounding a bit more like a child's...
no, it sounds awesome. What's it called? Like, is there a call or is just like...
if you go online and you Google crocodile farm, I don't remember the name, I apologize, but like I should have done my research. But that farm, they charge about $22, I think, per person. And then you get to feed the crocodiles, get to see the eggs, etc. And then
is it a Long Kwan?
Yes,
Long Kwan Hang crocodile farm.
Yeah, correct.
I might be mixing up going to the turtle museum and the crocodile farm.
So you think all reptiles all the same lah?
But that sounds.
Where did it start to sound different?
I remember tanks and I'm there, but now you tell me a 65-year-old crocodile that can barely fit in the tank. I'm like, wait, I don't remember seeing that big a tank. So okay, it's turtles, I think. Yeah. But I'll definitely want to bring a kid there. Yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna hog the spotlight for a moment or so with my one shot moment, and I'm gonna also tell you guys about over the weekend, I went to the Asian Underwater Hockey Championships that was held in Singapore Sports School.
Underwater? Okay, I'm trying to piece together underwater.
Yeah,
hockey.
So they have little sticks.
And then it's on the floor.
Okay.
I used to play hockey a lot, but not underwater hockey.
You can swim, you can swim.
No, I never used to play underwater hockey, but it's like
There's a
hockey
whole-
adjacent lah. It's like hockey.
We've had discussions about
hey,
swimming.
I
We've
can
had discussions.
swim, okay?
Just clarifying.
The Neon City.
Oh yeah, that one. The
Oh,
water.
that's true lah. That's true.
Yeah,
That was
city
my
fountain
freestyle.
water. Yeah. Water was
But yeah,
the
underwater
knee
hockey, they
level.
play with like little small sticks.
And it's on the bottom of the water.
Yes,
As
it's
in
on
the
bottom.
sinks to the bottom.
And I actually, I must admit that I went in with very low expectations. I was just thinking I was going to be just another sport and I'll just watch raw. But it was actually quite exciting.
But how do you watch?
They have cameras.
Oh, cameras.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's a
okay.
bit like F1, right? You go down there, you don't really see much.
Oh, you
but
watch
you actually
the
see everything on the screen.
Oh.
Yeah, and Singapore actually won 2 of the matches. So the elite men and I believe the women masters, if I remember correctly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
there were countries like China, the UAE, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, Philippines as well.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it, man. It looks insane.
Yeah.
Because
How deep is that water?
2 meters.
yeah. So and the ball or
The
puck,
puck.
the
Yeah.
puck is on the ground, no?
Then how long is the stick to it?
Short.
Yeah,
Oh,
short.
short.
It's
Also,
very
you have to swim.
They are like diving the whole time. I don't understand how.
It's about
swimming can-
the length of this.
Yeah.
Oh wow. that's
I don't
crazy.
understand how they can do that. Like they're holding their breath, no?
Yeah.
It's
It's
nuts,
synchronized
yeah.
swimming. They have to go upside down.
Yeah, exactly. Something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Correct. So and it was pretty exciting. So I actually ended up like feeling like I had like a cardio workout because Singapore was like leading and then behind and then leading again, and
Is it an Olympic sport? Like this?
it wasn't an Olympic sport for Paris,
Oh, it wasn't.
but apparently it will be.
Oh, it will
in
be.
the coming one. I'm not sure, but yeah.
So it's just Singapore have a good team and like we could potentially win a medal from it.
Well, so far we're Asian champs for
Asian champs.
for the elite men.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
but what I heard is that I think Australia and one of the very random countries like Puerto Rico or Costa Rica is like the world champions.
Oh, I see. Wow. And that's a regular league that happens, or it's just a one over the weekend thing? Oh.
This one is a one-time thing because Singapore hosted it. Yeah, so they actually apparently planned it for a long time already
I see.
to bring the event to Singapore.
Got it.
Yeah,
Wow.
but there are men and women and youth team that train on a regular basis. I think it's 3 or 4 times weekly
Okay.
just to participate in sport. And they go around the world also participating in competitions.
Okay,
That's crazy.
we can share a link to an example of underwater hockey, lah.
Oh yeah.
And then the crocodile farm also, lah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else? Even though we say one Shiok Thing, the segment is
No.
called One Shiok Thing.
Hey.
Lionel.
I thought I'll give a bit more value to you guys.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great. And yeah, in future, if you have anything, big announcement and all, we're always welcome back.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I mean, it was a pleasure. I had a lot of fun.
Awesome.
I hope I don't get in trouble for anything I said, especially with the bus enthusiasts.
We'll put a link to your personal thing there, so you can message him if you're not happy about something.
Correct.
And a lot of them have my direct line already. So
Okay.
we try and keep an open
Okay.
communication channel.
Okay, awesome.
Cool.
But yeah, thanks so much for coming, and to everyone who listened and watched, thank you all for listening, and hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you all soon.